And also, with speaking of the concept of tolerance and desensitization over time, we said that like if we look at people who were considered strayers, people who have strayed a little bit from the path, maybe a few decades ago or 50 years ago, whatever. If they look at people today who are maybe considered on the path, they may be like shocked at how far they are off the path, if you know what I mean. Just a little bit of changes. We need to be careful for that. The little foxes are the ones that spoil the vine. Then in verse 24, in the Arabic part of Coptic reader and in RSV, it says, "For they went far astray on the paths of error, accepting as gods those animals which even their enemies despise." This makes me think that humans can actually teach the devils or demons new ways on how to tempt other humans. Last time I said something else, but some of you said, "Yeah, I don't know if I agree with that or like that or whatever," so I changed it. Remember the example of the one who was trying to cook an egg on a candle?
Yeah.
And then as we went on, we came across something called a punishment worthy of God. It was in verse 26, chapter 12. I don't know what a punishment worthy of God is, but it sounds very scary to me, and I hope none of us ever find out what a punishment worthy of God is. And then the last couple of points was that, again, reiterated that the purpose of anything that God does, whether it's lovely or horrible, whether it's very pleasurable, whether it's very painful, what is it? The purpose of anything that God does is
for our salvation.
Our salvation, exactly. So, I mean, we're all in agreement saying it's for our salvation. Whatever he does, it's for our salvation. Just need to remember that while we're going through the not so fun time. Bottom line, we said, is don't remain fixed in the cast of your mind. Be teachable. And remember, we said there are certain things that we need to be, for sure, fixed in the cast of our mind. There's certain things, there's no budging. Look at the martyrs, how resolute they were. Worship Messiah, no way, kill me, take whatever, I don't care. But then in other things, we need to be, open-minded and willing to consider. And then we got to chapter 13, and we just covered one verse from chapter 13, but it was very nice. It's the one that says, "Yes, naturally stupid are all men who have not known God." Remember that? And we said, why is that? Because all creation testifies, everything shows the glory of God. And we mentioned, remember, several verses, there's some Psalms and from Job and so on. And we said that people who see all God's creation and do not know God because they did not bother to logically answer the question, who made all this? Or if you can please mute that and turn the speaker down.
I can do it.
At the top of it. The volume button. Okay. The volume button on the edge of the iPad.
I don't know where her volume is. Other way, Mama.
All right.
Just exit it. Just get out of it. No.
I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone.
We're done now?
No.
Give it to me, Steve. This is all on
Give
you.
it to me. I will
خلاص,
take it
I
out.
closed it. خلاص.
What are you trying to do? You're sitting with us
Try
in the room.
again.
Because she wants
خلاص مو
the
بستيقظ.
I wanted to see and read, and I thought.
Sorry, we'll work on that later.
Okay.
Sorry about that, y'all.
It's okay. I can see.
Sorry.
Bible study in the multiverse of madness.
We said that people who see all of God's creation and do not know God because they did not bother to logically answer the question, who made all this or how did it come to be, are defined according to Wisdom chapter 13, verse 1 as foolish and stupid. It's not me, it's the Bible. Okay. Now that we're done with now that we're done with the review of last week and some entertainment along the way, let's go ahead and see if somebody can read from chapter 13 from verse 1 through 9. And just who wants to read, just let me know. On Zoom or in the room.
I'll read it.
All right, go ahead, Missy.
I'll use the white one on the right.
Yep.
Yes, naturally stupid are all men who have not known God and who from the good things that are seen have not been able to discover him who is, or by studying the works have failed to recognize the artificer. Fire, however, or wind, or the swift air, the sphere of the stars, impetuous water, heaven's lamps, are what they have held to be the gods who govern the world. If charmed by their beauty, they have taken things for gods, let them know how much the Lord of these excels them, since the very author of beauty has created. And if they have been much mightier is he that has formed them. Since through the grandeur and beauty of the creatures, we may, by analogy, contemplate their author. Small blame, however, attaches to these men, for perhaps they only go astray in their search for God and their eagerness to find him. Living among his works, they strive to comprehend them and fall victim to appearances seeing so much beauty. Even so, they are not to be excused. If they are capable of acquiring enough knowledge to be able to investigate the world, how have they been so slow to find its master?
Abuna, we can see the Coptic reader. It's only on 1 and 2.
I also think we lost audio again.
Oh, maybe.
Yep.
Yeah, and yeah.
Okay, the audio is back now.
Yes, back now.
Yes, you.
Thank you for that. I'm gonna keep this thing over here so I can notice if that button goes away. It goes away every once in a while. Anyway, we're seeing, I heard you. Can you see the three versions of the Bible?
We can.
No, the Coptic
Right.
reader, we can see it.
Okay, so right now Missy was only reading from the Jerusalem Bible, so we were only looking at that one version. But now that we go verse by verse, I will be scrolling through, the verses that we're covering. All right, so we already talked about verse 1 and the creation and how those who do not know God are simply, according to the Bible, foolish and stupid because they kind of,
Is ignorant by nature?
huh?
Ignorant by nature, does that mean that it's just acknowledging men are foolish in their nature, or does that mean and if somebody's naturally stupid, you can't blame them? So is this verse saying we are stupid just by our nature and we need help, or?
No, and as we will see,
I think we lost you again, Abuna.
Yes.
thank you. Keep telling me when you lose me, keep telling me because now I know how to do it quickly.
No problem.
We'll work on that, see how we can fix it. Tell me if I click this, can y'all hear me okay now? No. Okay. Now you can hear me okay.
Yep, we can
Yes.
hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. George is saying that for those of us of us online, this is just a sign for us to attend next week in person.
Yeah, let's make it.
It's a sign. It's a sign.
معلش. Because some يعني don't drop off in the dark where they have little kids, whatever. Okay, so not only they refused to see that there is a God behind all this creation, no. That's not foolish enough. So what do they do with all this gorgeous creation around them? That's in verse 2. So it says, I'm going to be reading from the Jerusalem Bible, but you can look from anything, from any version. It says, fire, however, or wind, or the swift air, the sphere of the stars, impetuous water, heaven's lamps are what they have held to be the gods who govern the world. So he's saying, like, they took, not only did they refuse to look at the creator, but they took the created things themselves as gods. And so, verse 3, if charmed by their beauty, they have taken things for gods, let them know how much the Lord of these excels them, since the very author of beauty has created them. Yeah, he's saying, use your brain a little, people. Like, if all these created things are so beautiful and gorgeous and awe-inspiring, then how much more beautiful and gorgeous and awe-inspiring would the one who created them be? Verses 4 and 5 are similar, but they're focusing more on power as opposed to on beauty. Says, and if they have been impressed by their power and energy, let them deduce from these how much mightier is he that has formed them. In verse 5, since through the grandeur and beauty of these creatures, we may, by analogy, contemplate their author. So, does this address kind of your point, Joseph?
Yes.
It's like they don't want to, they just don't want to.
They know,
So-
but they don't. They know, but they don't want.
Oops. I realize now that when I hit the button, it takes it off that, so now I need to remember. Spanish. Excuse me. So when you see incredibly beautiful art, by all means admire it. But admire all the more the artist who made it. And when you read an amazingly brilliant book, by all means appreciate it, enjoy it. But appreciate all the more the author who wrote it. Same with creation. Same with creation. And I think people out there who say, no, there is no intelligent design, there's no creator, there's no God, like it's, I think the biggest, most stubborn slap on the face, I don't know. And if any of you knows, maybe you who read a lot or listen to a lot of podcasts or something, if any of you know what reasons do these people give as to say there is no God and how they explain how these things came to be, like, I'm really eager to understand it because it makes sense to me. It makes no sense to me how they come to this conclusion.
I think we're, can I say something about that, or?
Please do, yes, go ahead.
Like NAA, because I go to the 12-step program, and prior to coming, that's how I ended up coming to church. It was through, or came to Christ through the 12 steps. And so, like, you have to like pause and dig deep, like in the culture, you're just going and going to kind of like pay your bills or get a better job or like take care of the material stuff. So you don't really take the time or the same amount of time to examine the spiritual side of things. So when I went to AA, that's what they were doing in order for me to gain recovery, was to pause.
To get to slow down and.
Yeah, exactly. Slow down, reflect, and examine if there was something greater than myself that made everything else. Which, when I did that, I was able to say, "Oh my God, yeah, like there has to be, and then one thing led to another, and then fast forward, here I am, but like, you don't really, unless you're, like, we don't really examine, like, you have to pause or take the time out to investigate, otherwise it can just pass by you.
Yeah, that's why the devil wants us to be very busy all the time.
Yeah,
Good job.
I totally agree with Escadar. It's a lack of examination and seeking truth. And I think it's just simply hardened hearts. It's just the absolute resistance to allow the thought to even penetrate.
So I definitely agree that this is a part of it that makes it hard for us because we're all running 100 miles an hour. But I think there's more because these people whom like you encourage to slow down and stuff, and they can sit there and study the stuff for years, but then they tell you no
So,
intelligence. Go ahead.
I think that in some people, it's a matter of semantics. So they're not attributing it to God, but they're attributing it to the universe. Or they're attributing this to like some other thing. But when they do that and they say it's the universe or it's an energy or whatever, it's impersonal. So there's no expectation on them to have to do anything or to change.
To live up to the
I-
standards of that universe or thing.
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with Missy 110%. You constantly hear people say like, "Oh, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual." And it's like, well, tell me what the difference is. You know, it's like, "Oh, I don't pray, but I meditate." And it's like, "Okay, what's the difference, my man or my woman?" Like it just, yeah. I think also people don't want to be accountable. That's
Yes.
one thing. Like, I feel like people are kind of repulsed by religion. They just don't want that sense of responsibility.
Yeah, also when somebody, can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
When somebody very healthy, very active, and then kind of disease is affected with it, number one, he will grumble against God. He will never think to appreciate.
Are you saying people who don't usually acknowledge God, they acknowledge him when things aren't good?
Yes,
Yeah, and they say they're mad at God, whom they would refuse to acknowledge at other times.
but if it is a good person, a holy person, he will appreciate the gift of God. Even if
We try.
Right?
We try. Okay.
I was gonna say,
Yes,
I'm
go ahead.
sorry,
Yeah, go
that
ahead.
even when Christ was with them, in front of them, it has nothing to, I don't know about semantics, but he was right there in front of them and they still refused. And in Revelations, when it says that Christ will be coming down on a cloud, they will be staring at him coming down, gnashing their teeth. It's like, it doesn't really make a difference how it's said, what is said, what they see with their own eyes. It's an absolute refusal.
I
That's
thought
why
at the second coming, that gnashing of the teeth is not like the gnashing of the teeth that they did to St. Stephen. I thought it's the gnashing of the teeth like
Yeah, that
from fear and horror and terror and stuff.
this one is the regret.
But you're absolutely right, Michael. Like it's mind-boggling because those who wanna believe, they believe no matter what, and those who don't want to won't believe no matter what. Even right in front of their eyes, they say they see the Lord doing a miracle. Go ahead, Raf.
Yeah, but Messi was talking about those who don't believe in God, existing God. We rarely, if any, in the past, there's such people. Everybody in the past believed in some God.
Yeah.
Because for the same reason as Kadar mentioned, people back then had all the time to sit and meditate and look. So everybody had some God of some sort. This atheism thing is a kind of new to human race.
There's a verse that says, "But the fool is said in his heart there is no God."
Yeah,
And that verse would not have existed if at least during the, I think at the time of his writing, there's a concern for it. So maybe this verse was written for our future for now. I don't know.
I think it meant the people who ignore the existence of God,
Like the Israelites. when they lived apart from what God wanted them to do.
And there's always exceptions. There probably people didn't believe in any God back then, but this minority, like everybody.
I think it's kind of like a combination of many things. The extreme busyness with, I mean, good busyness is good, right? Because idle minds is the devil workshop. But this just running 100 miles an hour with like,
I
not
think
all of them,
man,
some of them are trivial things. And in addition to the bombardment of a gajillion like crazy ideologies, so like the truth kind of gets lost in the fog.
I think man is stupid, as is written in the Bible, because how much the Jews got from God, how much He showed them and took care of them. And as soon as they landed in the promised land, they started to worship idols.
So thank you very much.
I think also to kind of add something on top of that, I think it's the way we have learned to build our societies. Because if you look at I don't know, a society like Oriental society, right? In an Oriental country, like God in one way or another, like doesn't matter how well they follow through with the principles, at least they have the fundamental belief of God. But like I feel like here in the West, um, a kid is born and like, they go to school and they get an education whether they believe in God or not. Something bad happens, God forbid, the ambulance is going to come, whether they believe in God or not. So I feel like here in the West, people put a lot more emphasis in like, oh, I'll be fine regardless. I don't need God. You know what I mean? Because we have capitalism to rely on, we have money to rely on, which is like a very tricky substitute for God. So
Mm.
I feel like, and that's why some of the countries like they're referred to as Babylon, or like that's why Babylon is referred to as a bad thing in the Bible because they put so much emphasis in their own military and currency that they didn't need God. You know what I mean?
You
So I feel like
reminded
that's
me
what.
of was it Isaiah or earlier in wisdom that we were talking about? We made that conclusion about how the wealthier, more technologically advanced, the whatever a nation becomes, the farther that as a nation goes away from God.
Yes.
Remember that?
Yes, I remember it. I remember
I don't think I was
It's
here
one
for
of the
that.
books. Okay, we're gonna resume. I think we stopped at verses 6 and 7. We'll make sure we're on the right scroll also. Okay, and then verses 6 and 7, they say something so gentle and so sweet. It says, small blame, however, remember after everything we said, small blame, however, attaches to these men. For perhaps they only go astray in their search for God and their eagerness to find Him living among His works. They strive to comprehend them and fall victim to appearances, seeing so much beauty. Do you want me to read that again, or you got it?
I think
You got it.
read it again,
Okay,
it's beautiful.
what can we learn from these two verses?
Don't get lost in the weeds.
Don't judge.
And I don't judge, okay? Tell me more, don't get lost in the weeds.
Yeah, like don't get lost in this vantage point, right? To look beyond, like to be able to look beyond it.
Okay. Y'all, you're right. It's kind of not what I was looking for, but like as we were reading this chapter about like how stupid, foolish, how they're refusing and all that stuff, and then divinely inspired word from God says, small blame, however, attaches to these men. Perhaps they only go astray, perhaps they are searching for God's eagerness and being caught victim in this beauty and appearances of all this creation that they kind of get sidetracked.
Yeah, the evidence for that is Saint Moses, the strong.
Saint Moses the strong?
Yeah,
Yes.
he was talking to the sun and are you God, talking to the fire and things. So that verse is applicable to him. He was looking for God, but he
Mm.
looks for the things he can see. But because he has the right heart, God showed him.
For me, this is what I learned from this, that if God himself is willing to make excuses for people and to give them the benefit of the doubt, how much more are we humans do the same? Let us all be Hannan, like our Yah is Hannan.
اسمع حنينين.
You know what I mean? Like, okay, I don't want to burn it, but like after a couple verses, we will see, no, they're not really excused.
Yeah.
And then it will say why. But the thing I want to get from that is that really it's so much better to fall into the hand of God than on the hand of man. Like, are we like that? Or are we so quick to point the finger? Like, for example, like we see people who, actually, I think like that's what I was pointing out earlier. Like these people, they're so distracted. They're so busy. The life is 100 miles an hour. They're bombarded with all kinds of crazy stuff, and so it would make sense that they would think all kinds of crazy stuff. Like, and we need to, instead of be like, I don't know, disgusted with such people. Like,
But
we need to
يبونا
kind of understand, yani, where they're coming from and how, and try to come up with excuses and try to come up with reasons to appeal to what they're yearning for, so that we can bring them along instead of just quickly, oh, look at them and point the finger and then be done with it.
Mm.
but يبونا now there are many sources you can find God. Everywhere, churches, everywhere on
But
the
there are
media,
many
on social
sources,
media.
but there's 100 times as many sources of lies.
Yes,
So there's so many that you can't
they
pick
get
which one to look at, which one to go by. It's hard it's easy to miss the truth.
and still will be more.
Along the line of what you were saying, I was thinking like when we're evangelizing, to be able to tap into the thing that they're seeking or the reason why they've stumbled, right?
Yes.
And to be able to come alongside and acknowledge like, wow, that thing that you're looking for is beauty and you
Yeah.
found it, but don't stop at this. There's like one more step to go.
Yes. Because when you think about it, like all people are looking for the same thing.
Yeah.
Sense of peace, a sense of belonging, a sense of purpose, a sense of worth,
Mm.
sense of validation, and so it's just that many of us try to see those things from wrong sources. And so, yeah, we learned that you reminded me of John 4, the lessons from the like one-on-one evangelism, like from our Lord with Saint Faustina, the Samaritan woman,
Mm.
and how to be able to tap into the good.
And also, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
go ahead.
not to say nothing, but like also like we have to remember that like other human beings. I mean, everybody knows this. I'm just like the devil is the real enemy, not atheists or the Satanists
Yes.
or whatever other sin that we're offended by. But like I just have to remember that, and then also what qualifies me to be here is that it's the same. I do the very same thing. So really, for me, the terror is the fact that I know the Lord and I still do all those things than the person that doesn't know the
Yeah.
Lord.
Yeah.
So I need that's my goal is like, hey, I need to be hard on myself because it's so much easier to get road rage and I get offended at people I don't like or they're culturally not like me or whatever. I feel threatened. It's bad with women too. I'm just saying, like,
It's a brilliant point, because if we who supposedly love God, who are supposedly regular at church and confessions, regular communion, and regular at praying, reading the Bible, and we fall on our face so many times, so how much harder would it be for others who don't have that stuff? And it would be great if we could look at them with the eyes of God, with the love of God. So you can almost sense like the torment of like kind of making excuses for them, but then we go to verse 8. Even so, they are not to be excused. Allah, why, Lord? The answer is in verse 9. If they are capable of acquiring enough knowledge to be able to investigate the world, how have they been so slow to find its master? What does this tell us about people who do not acknowledge God from his creation?
They're quick, but they're, it's so interesting because of the first verse of the stupidity. This is saying that they are capable of acquiring enough knowledge.
Hmm.
So, go ahead, Rafa.
No, sorry,
So the capacity to acquire knowledge means if you were stupid that you couldn't acquire knowledge, then this verse doesn't apply to you.
Right.
So I don't know. I find it a very interesting parallel to the stupid verse. Not the verse that is stupid, the verse that refers to stupidity.
I hear you. Go ahead, though.
More
Well,
explanation.
I don't remember an example, but I think the heart and mind sometimes being used exegetically. So I think the stupidity here is the stupidity of the heart.
Like stubbornness.
Yes. But,
And yeah, and I think that the I don't want to speak for, but I think the point that he's saying is like, okay, what if somebody, I don't know, very low IQ or very low whatever EQ or whatever, somebody who has some retardation or something like that. And of course, those don't count. And if anything, I tend to find that such people have a much higher SQ, spiritual quotient, if you will, if you want to call it that. So if they are capable of acquiring enough knowledge to be able to investigate the world, how have they been so slow to find the master? And like I was asking, what does this tell you about the people who do not acknowledge God from his creation? They're smart enough to and still.
That was my point earlier, was that these people fail to seek truth. They're not searching. They're not, and it's right there in front of them. And more so today than ever, we have all the knowledge in the world in our palm of our hands. There is no excuse.
You're right.
But do you think that sorry, Abuna and I were watching a documentary yesterday, and it was talking about like these paradigms and how when you see things through a particular paradigm or a particular lens, you're just trying to like find the evidence that fits whatever it is that you believe. So do you think that the people started out looking for truth and then they found something that they could like hitch their wagon to?
Mm-mm. I don't think so.
Well, I mean, certainly. And these days you have a lot of ideologies and ideas that are just, what does it say? Their ears are itching to hear, right? There's a lot, there's a multitude of detours that you can take on the path to truth and easily get distracted and end up off road, and just completely off path.
Yeah, to me, it tells me that this verse specifically tells me that, or 8 and 9, that people who do not acknowledge the existence of God from creation are not doing it out of ignorance or lack of knowledge. They're actually doing it out of stubbornness and hard-headedness. That they are refusing to do so. They're not being open-minded. They are fixed in the cast of their mind. And it's ridiculously applicable to our Bible today. And this is the last point I was going to say from this passage here, is that science does not contradict Christianity, but rather it supports and affirms Christianity. And the more we advance in science, the more we discover that science actually backs up what Christianity claims. I recall, do y'all remember, I don't remember up until when that people thought the earth was flat.
Galileo,
Huh?
until Galileo.
What century? What?
14th,
14th
14th century.
14th or 15th century. But yet, if you look at the Psalms, which were written 1,000 years BC, it says that the Lord holds the sphere of the world in his hand. And I don't know why nobody saw this and said, like, wait, sphere? Wait, what is, it's not flat? You know what I'm saying?
I remember the Muslims in Egypt, they think it is flat, they don't think it is circle.
Not right now.
I mean, there is a flat
Yeah,
earth society right now.
Yes, yes.
Some time ago.
Yes,
No, there is.
I've seen a debate right now. and they are very good debaters. Like it's not like a slam dunk. Yeah, yes.
So they're saying
Yeah.
that like NASA and spaceships and satellites and all the movies, this is all made up. Conspiracy theory.
Conspiracy theory and the two, the Antarctica,
The pole.
yeah, it is a wall of ice around the circle of flat Earth.
Just have them just go in one direction and keep going in the one direction. See if you get back to the same spot, right?
Yeah,
If you watch
There
it,
you go.
you will find some things behind. Of course.
Before
so-
that, I want to say that people are not keen to search for the real God. They're busy with other things,
Well, I think Missy said it. It's
other
because
alternatives.
a lot of people this way when this thing or whatever doesn't exist, or if I call it a universe or energy or whatever, then I don't have any responsibility. Then I'm my own God, which is actually a great segue to the next passage that we'll get to. Wait, before we go though, I think somebody was going to say something on Zoom meeting.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Mike.
forgot what I was gonna say, but oh yeah,
Welcome to the club.
that's why
false religion.
that's why I enjoy talking to converts, because those are the people who decided to seek truth and were very intentional about it. They wanted to find that end of the path, and that's not something that I personally experienced being cradle Orthodox, but I should say not to the same extent, because I have been on journeys where I am searching for God. I was looking for that deeper connection, but it takes intentionality.
God himself, he's literally dying to reveal himself to us, make himself known. So anybody really who tries that even a little bit, but sincerely, will find it. Thank you. Okay, now we'll go to the next part, which is chapter 13, verse 10 through 19. 10 through 19. We'll read.
I can read Abuna.
All right, go ahead. Which one are you reading from?
I will do Coptic Reader. That's the one in the top
Sure.
left.
Yeah, the black
Cool.
one.
10
No
through.
problem. 10 through 19.
Okay. Yet they are unhappy, and their hope is among the dead, and they have called gods the works of the hands of men, gold and silver, the inventions of skill, and the likeness of animals or a useless stone, the work of an ancient hand. Or it is as if a craftsman, a workman of the forest, had cut straight wood, and, with his expertise, shaved off all of its bark, and, with his skill, diligently fashioned a vessel, practical for use in life, and even the remains of his work were exhausted in the preparation of food. And from the remainder of this, which has become useful for nothing, a curved piece of wood and full of knots, he diligently carves it in his spare time, and, through the knowledge of his art, forms it and makes it in the image of man. Or something comparable to an animal, thoroughly rubbing it with red ochre to make it red with the color of the pigment and to cover every imperfection which is in it. And it is as if he made a fitting resting place for it, even setting it in a wall and fastening it with iron, providing for it lest it should fall, knowing that it is unable to help itself, for it is an image and it is in need of help. And then making an offering, he inquires about his wealth and about his sons and about marriage, and he is not ashamed to talk that which has no soul. And for health, indeed, something unhealthy is being prayed to, and for life, he petitions what is dead, and for help, he calls upon something helpless. And for a good journey, he entreats that which is unable to walk. And for acquiring and for working and for success in all things, he entreats that which is useless in all things.
Glory to the Holy Trinity, our God, servant these volumes. Thank you.
Boy,
I remember
he,
reading the same, but I don't know where.
Isaiah?
Isaiah,
Yes.
Yeah.
but
Isaiah.
so much more like really sarcasm there. Like,
You're right. I remember the one in Isaiah said like there was also covering it with like gold or silver or whatever, but then when he puts it up somewhere, he has to put something under it to level it, lest it totters and falls off. It was when we're doing the book of Isaiah, I think.
Or no, they fix it to the wall so it will not fall.
This one. In this one, they fix it to the wall. Okay. So as we concluded from the last passage, those who do not know God from his creation are without excuse and are actually being stubborn and closed-minded and are simply refusing to acknowledge him. But now we get to an even worse category of people. Who are they?
Idol worshippers.
They're not the ones who worship the things that God made. Remember earlier we were thinking about like they worshiping like the wind, the fire, the stars, or whatever. No, now
They
these are
made.
worshiping the things that they made. Exactly. So if according to the Bible, people who worship the things that God made, like fire and wind and stars and water and animals, are stupid and foolish and hard-headed, what would the Bible call people who worship things that they made, as in idols? That's what we read here in verse 10. And so that's
Unhappy.
go ahead.
The difference is not only in the fact that God made versus what he made. The other thing, the supernatural thing, has some attributes of God. Like they are powerful, they are beneficial, and can be harmful at times, and kind of permanent. They never go away.
Yeah.
They're always there, the sun, the wind, the sea, while none of these attributes are applicable to.
Because the wise men used to worship these natural things.
Yeah, I mean, there are have some excuse because they have some attributes of a God.
But can I ask a question about this? Because
Please, go
I'm a
ahead.
little confused. So people who make idols, obviously the idol is nothing. But, and I'm thinking of other religions, like Hinduism, they have idols.
Mhm.
But there are like demons that animate, right?
Yeah.
So there are instances in history where we look back and we see that like demons would be in the statues, in the idols, and they would talk out of them. But that's not like as a general rule out of all statues, out of all idols, out of all deities that are handmade.
This is scary.
It has happened before.
Or say something like that.
Just like if they can appear out of thin air to say anything, as beasts or as people or as women or as angels or make voices or as animals or whatever. So they can make a voice out of a that sounds like it's coming out of a statue.
Yeah, I wanted to say the same thing, like they don't, when they make an idol, they believe that the Spirit of God will come and dwell. So the fact that it's still very stupid thing to do, but
Oh,
I
it's like
want to
building
make-
an altar.
Yeah.
yeah, I want to make an analogy, but don't get it wrong, like the icons here. Of course, we don't worship icons, but we say it's a holy representation of someone whom we love. So it's kind of this thing, but again, there's no excuse.
Yeah.
That's
Okay. So here's what the Bible says about them. Verse 10 it says, but wretched or miserable are they in dead things, putting their hopes, who have given to things made by human hands the title of gods, gold and silver, finely worked likeness of animals, or some useless stone carved by some hand long ago. So before we make too much fun of such people, money can be an idol. And is actually, I would dare say, the most worshipped idol, even more than Hindu gods or Buddhist statues or
It
whatever.
has an image.
Yeah, that is the most worshipped idol, possibly even among self-professed Christians, even people in our own churches. So if you are freed from worshiping the idol of money, you are probably doing better than the majority of all people, or of other people, by the grace of God. But still, please be careful, because there are still many other idols out there, like that are man-made, like power, popularity, toys, fancy cars, fancy houses, fancy boats, fancy whatever, self, even man-made statues of created things, whether they be people or animals or made-up deities. So, question.
They think themselves as gods, yeah, created something.
How do we know if we're worshiping idols? Like, how do we know?
How do we know if we're worshiping an idol?
Like, yeah, how do I know, like, if I love money or I'm just using it as a tool or something?
I think there's several things, but Yanni, did y'all on the Zoom hear the question? How do we know if something is an idol? Yeah, and I'll mention a couple of them, but I want to hear from other people. I think if it's something that usually, like, basically consumes my thought, that it's usually the first thing I think about when I wake up in the morning, or the last thing I'm thinking about when I go to bed, most of the time. And I would say it is the thing that I put my hope in, my reliance in, not things that I enjoy or appreciate or like, but no, that I put my hope and reliance in. And the more I have of, the more immensely my peace increases, and the less I have of, the more terrified and scared I am, as opposed to simply sad.
I'm not sure that that one would be the best indicator necessarily, because like there are people where money definitely was their idol, but the more they had of it, the less peace they had,
Yes,
because they were afraid of losing it.
Correct, but I meant that the more I get of it, the more peace I feel. Not that meaning like, ooh, I just got more of it. So like, and forget money, like even like people, family, a spouse, children, or power, authority, whatever.
I guess what I'm saying is that maybe the metric should be what happens when I lose it.
Mesh.
Because it's not, the peace isn't necessarily, and a poor person can idolize money. It's not just a rich person who idolizes money.
Yes.
So what happens when I lose it?
I meant, let's say a person who has $0, okay, and they get $20. They feel, oh, okay, I'm gonna eat okay tonight. I'm gonna sleep okay. I'm gonna feel peace. I'm gonna whatever. And if they lose that, then I said, like, it's okay to enjoy it and to appreciate it and all that stuff, but not to. Maybe Missy's right. Maybe like instead of saying like they have more peace when they have more of it, but like they really freak out and lose their peace when they lose it.
They definitely have.
They actually, even without losing, they don't live a peaceful life.
Yes.
They're always.
But like Escadar said, but is it bad if like all I have is $20 and I lose it, and for me to be sad or something like or worried? Does that mean that I lose my? I don't know.
No.
I don't think so.
It's the
But you
pursuit
have
of
millions.
The parable of
The pursuit of it. Okay.
there was like something I read before about the four idols framework, and it's like we can check with ourselves if we pursue any of them more than the other or at all. Money, power, pleasure, and fame. So I believe that we can examine ourselves if we pursue any of them like deliberately and we want more of it, that could be an idol.
Money, power, pleasure, and fame.
Sorry, I wasn't going to address what Fedwa said. I want to go back to what Escadar about the $20 and losing it. Of course, a person who only has $20 and they lose it, they're going to be sad. but what is their next, what is the thing that they do right after that? Are they crying out to God? Or are they trying to figure out a way how to get more money? If they're crying out to God, then money's not their idol. Like God is their God, right? Because they're running to him. But if they're trying to figure out how to get more money, then God is not in his appropriate place.
So I like that. That's one of the
Yeah,
things
like
that we can add to it where that's one of the things that we can add to it where an idol is something that I run to in crises.
There you go. That's good. Yeah, I like that.
That will be something. So it could be my friends, could be my parents, could be my spouse, could be
And so now going
food.
back to what Fadwa said, if we're feeling insecure, because that could be like a crisis, right? If we go to one of these four things, if we're trying to get likes, I don't remember what the four things were, but if we're going to those four things, then that would be an indication that there's a problem.
If you look at God as a source of, like, he is the endless well, right? The source, the water source. That's what you're going to run to when you're parched. Nothing else. So that would, that's what
the main point. Thank you, Fadwa. Yeah, she said money, power, pleasure, and fame. MPPS. The main thing that I wanted to get out of this is that beware of reading in the Old Testament. Go, it's foolish people, making a stick and making an idol, etc., etc. Because we know a whole lot more, and we do the same thing. It's just maybe it's not some stick that I paint red, but it's some other things. So it's, I don't want to say we can be just as foolish or maybe even worse. But I have a question. Why do people make such idols?
So we want to be okay.
Sorry, I need to push the button again. Why do people make idols? Let's say the actual statue.
Because we need help.
Hopeless because of the verse 10. It's putting their hopes, they need hope.
Can I say something?
Go ahead.
Because they want a God for them. And they are confused, they don't know the real God. So are making anything to be God for them.
Okay, what else?
I think
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I think kind of like to add on top of that, without God we have this void. So without understanding where to look for God, we fill that void with other things.
Yeah, you have a good
Idols.
eye, and I agree. But go ahead, Miss. What were you gonna say?
Because we need help.
Because we need help. Okay, what do you?
Abuna Malish, man is always in need of need of God.
But he's not asking why
To ask
man
him for
seek God.
everything.
The question why man makes idols.
Yes.
I think it's because people make idols to exercise control over their situation.
Doesn't
Like
know
they
him.
don't want to submit to God because in order to submit to God, you need to surrender, and that requires acceptance and letting go of control. And so I think that's when the idols get created.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
Can
So
you say
it's it's because people make idols because they want control. Because they themselves want to be God. They don't want a God that they submit to, but rather they want to make a God that submits to them. We humans are masters of fooling ourselves. And truly, the heart is deceitful above all things.
And to reverse the process of selection, like with God choose us, and thus we choose him. With the idols, they choose the God, and the God has no choice except to accept the.
Yeah, there's a lot of reverse. Go ahead, Miss.
I understand what Mary is saying,
Mhm.
and I can get on board with that. But in verse 17.
Just don't go ahead.
Verse 17, where in the
Okay,
same.
go ahead.
I mean, I think, I could be wrong, but I would imagine that everybody at the table, or that when we're before the Lord, and we're asking him, we're petitioning him, We're asking for the same things.
Yes, we're gonna get there.
Okay.
Yes, we're gonna get there. Let's try not to go ahead. So, yeah, it's because, yeah, I mean, the person like wants to make this little statue, whatever, so he can tell that statue what to do, and it would do what he wants. Like we're saying, the heart is deceitful above all things. That's from Jeremiah 17:9, by the way. Oh, speaking of 17:9, do you know the whole verse? Jeremiah 17:9 or 17:9 and 10. I find it to be really neat, actually. I'm just going to share it with y'all because I can. Because I want to. It says, the heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? And then look at verse 10. I, the Lord, search the heart. I test the mind, even to give each person according to his ways, according to the fruit of his doings. I love that. Who can know the heart? Who can? God can. And my heart can fool me, but it won't fool God.
Yes.
Or I can fool myself, but I won't be able to fool God. And then now he's going to talk in kind of a humorous, pitiful way about the process of making an idol, as George read, to emphasize how stupid/foolish it is to worship idols. So look at verse 11.
I want to get what you said, so I remember. I'm really sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
So because trust our feelings and our hearts, so the safest thing to do is just go by what we are taught in the faith, right? Just trust the process that leads to God, so we don't deceive ourselves and get in trouble, stuff like that. What you're
Yes, but yes, and because I've seen the opposite too. I've seen, sometimes people confess with me and they're like, if they feel anything, they automatically dismiss it. And I think that the key is the need for each other, the need of a body of believers, the need of a father confession, the need of God's word. So I can check my feelings against all these things. But yes, like 99% of the part is like what you're saying is that, there's so many things that can affect our feelings, right? A bad meal, or I didn't sleep well at night, or.
I'm so sorry, Father. I wasn't worried about the feelings. I'm just saying, instead of trusting myself and what I want to do, we're supposed to trust what the church says will lead us to salvation. Like.
Correct. The Bible and
everything is what I meant.
Yes.
That's the safest thing to do.
Yes.
Instead of trusting my own ideas or whatever.
The Bible and the church. I agree.
Okay, that's what sure.
So, verse 11.
أبونا Jeremiah 17:9 to what?
Jeremiah 17:9-10. Okay, verse 11. It says, take a woodcut. He fells a suitable tree, nearly strips off the bark all over, and then with admirable skill works the wood into an object useful in daily life. Person whose job is whatever, to cut wood, to make things out of wood, looks for the right tree, looks for the right piece of wood, strips off all the bark, and he carves it and shapes it, and he makes it smooth, etc., as much as he sees fit, in order to make it into a tool or a vessel or something, maybe like an axe or a saw or a bowl or something like that, in order to use it for his service. In order to use it for his service, to earn his daily living. And not only that, but what does he do with the leftover wood chips? This is like, I like that because it kind of keeps like the meaning like of the thing. In verse 12, it says, the bits left over from his work, he uses for cooking his food, then eats his fill. Like, so he puts and like puts it in the I guess the furnace or the oven or whatever. And he uses it for fuel, for wood or fuel. Okay, no problem so far. And then after this woodworker ate his fill, there's still a bit of wood here or there. So after dinner, it's time for some entertainment. That's verse 13, right? He sits there and kind of carves a little bit. There is still a, hold on. I like the word choices in the Jerusalem Bible. There is still a good for nothing bit left over. Gnarled and knotted billet, like it's kind of twisted and bendy and has a lot of knots. He picks it up, whittles it, kind of carves it with the concentration of leisure. Y'all get that, with the concentration of leisure? Yeah, without really focusing. You know, it's not like he's trying to make something super accurate. Okay? He shapes it with the skill of relaxation. He gives it a human shape. So after he ate, kind of full, you know, he's like just kind of playing with his knife and like not really, it's not have to be perfect. Like it's not, I don't know, like imagine
Mix it into the water.
it's not like, you know, they're building the pyramids or something. Like this, somebody was just good at casually playing with something. He carves it in familiar shape, but half-heartedly, without hardly any concentration, lackadaisically. He makes it into a human shape, or perhaps, that's verse 14, or perhaps he makes it into some vile animal, smears it with ochre, paints its surface red, coats over all its blemishes. Yeah, you see how he's doing, right? It's like, it's so, what's the word, derogatory? Like, he's exposing here how this idol started out with a useless, good-for-nothing, twisted, knotted piece of wood left over that the woodcutter whittled playfully. And not only that, but he now paints it and covers the blemishes or the knots of this useless piece of wood that he didn't even feel like throwing in the fire. Okay, then what? Now he's showing how pitifully useless that piece of leftover wood is. Even after painting it and covering its blemishes, that's verses 15 and 16. So like after all this work, no, not good enough. It's he's so pitiful. He next makes a worthy home for it. Lets it into the wall, fixes it with an iron clamp. Verse 16, thus he makes sure that it will not fall down. He's well aware it cannot help itself. It is only an image and needs to be upheld. You know, he has to lean it up vertically against the walls, or like lest it topples over, or ties it to something.
And they still believe it's God.
Since it's so twisted and knotted, and you may need to tie it down to something so it doesn't fall. Rafi, do you want to say something?
Yeah, an example of that, the fact that the idol does not even stand, is when the Philistines took the Ark of Covenant into Dagon's temple, and God deliberately made Dagon's statue fell on its face, and the head and arms were cut down to show the Philistines. That was an act of mercy for the Philistines, to show them their God is useless and helpless before God.
Exactly. And then we're gonna hurry. We have just a few minutes left. This person, after all this stuff, he treats it like a god, begging, praying, wrestling for every matter and for all aspects of his life. That's verse 17. Let me go there. And yet, if he wishes to pray for his goods, for his marriage, for his children, what's his marriages? Probably type. He does not blush to, what is that? Harangue?
Harangue.
Harangue this lifeless thing. Harangue, I looked it up as It means long, aggressive talk, pleading, wrestling with it, like, bothering, if you will, nagging, begging. I call this. I love the rest of this passage. It really shows like how ridiculous it is. Like this verses 18 and 19, which are the last two verses. Go ahead, Raf.
So, the sad thing is, verse 19 describe how we ought to pray to God. Like, has this struggling with God.
Yes. Verse 18 and 19 says, for health, he invokes weakness. Well, that's the end of verse 7. Then for life, he pleads with death. For help, he goes begging to utter inexperience. For his travels, to something that cannot stir a foot. For his profits and plans and success in pursuing his craft, he asks skill from something whose hands have no skill whatsoever. I wish he'd said, like, whom he himself has made. I was saying, like, so ask yourself, do I do this? Ask yourself, please, do I do this? Do I seek life from something dead? Do I seek assistance and help from something that I crafted and made? Do I place my hope in something that cannot help itself? Or in another human being?
Yes.
Another thing, do you pray, Lord, please give me wisdom and discernment? Lord, don't let me love the creation to the point of forgetting you, the creator. Lord, don't let me appreciate the gift so much that I forget you, the giver. Don't let me put my hope in the wisdom of others and forget you, the true wisdom, the source of all wisdom. This is how we ought to pray to God. Like I was saying last Sunday in the sermon, like, we need to learn how to laugh ourselves because we're a hot mess. Like, so this is how we ought to pray. This prayer, it reminds me of a beautiful prayer in Proverbs 30. I'm sure y'all are familiar with this. Proverbs 30 verses 7 to 9. It says, 2 things I request of you, of the Lord. Deprive me not of them, Lord, before I die. Number 1, remove falsehood and lies from me. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with the food allotted to me, lest I be full and deny you and say, who is the Lord? Or lest I be poor and steal and profane the name of my God. Like this whole prayer is about you, God. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I know very well, someone who knows very well that they're not that special. That they are fully capable of falling into all kinds of sin and idol worship and stuff. Yes, ma'am.
Which the reference 30.
Proverbs 30, verses 7 to 9. Last thing I'll say is if I may remind you of a little piece of the prayer that we actually read a couple of weeks ago in Wisdom chapter 12, verse 2. At the end of that verse, I'm going to read the whole verse for you. It says, therefore you correct little by little those who trespass, and you remind and warn them of the things wherein they sin, that they may be freed from wickedness, and that they may put their trust in you, O Lord. Put their trust in you, O Lord. So, speaking of trusting God, many of us treat God, and this is the point I think Missy was alluding to ahead when I told her, hold on. Many of us treat God like one of these man-made idols. Meaning, we want God to submit to us, to do our will, not the other way. And the evidence of this is that when what we want does not happen, we abandon him, we shun him, we get rid of him, we say, you're not fit to be my God. We don't say those words. But we kind of, if you will, quote unquote, get rid of him. It's kind of like this man who made this idol out of this bendy, twisty, knotted piece of wood that's worthless left over. If he prays to it and nothing happens and nothing happens, and he's gonna take it and throw it out, put it in the fire or throw it in the trash or
Make
throw it out in
another.
the woods. So we kind of, this is the evidence that I don't really worship God as my sovereign Lord and Master, but actually as my servant. I feel weird even saying this. Is that when things don't go my way, I'm like, I get rid of it, quote unquote. True faith is to trust in God and that He is good, whether you get what you hope for or not. Whether life is good or not, whether you are things are going your way or not. We need to trust in God and to always, no matter what, and to always remember that He is good, no matter what.
So that wasn't what I meant.
Yes, ma'am.
I meant that, like, I wasn't looking at it like we shouldn't be asking God for those things because we have no other helper in
That's
our
not what I
hardships
meant either.
than God, right?
That's not what I meant.
That-
Go ahead. What did you?
What I meant is that like we're all on the same level. That when we pray, we are asking God for the same things. We're asking God for our marriages. We're asking God for our health. We're asking God to be able to
Mhm.
reply to us for our life. So we're the same.
Go on, and
There is a difference.
that's all you're saying?
Yeah, I was just saying like we're asking
Okay.
God for the same things.
I guess I'm,
And the point, sorry, the reason that popped into my head again was to talk about coming alongside someone in evangelism to like a commonality is that, yeah, we all need the same things and we're all asking for the same
oh,
thing.
sorry. I
But
misunderstood.
you're asking from something that's never gonna be able to answer you.
Great. The thing I wanted to add is that, okay, look at, if you are able to take a survey of your prayers, kind of step back and think of all the times you pray. What percentage of them are praying for my marriage, for my children, for my livelihood, for my success, for my whatever? And what percentage of them is you just simply talking to God or adoring God or just talking to Him about your day and I want to add to that also, what is the ratio of your prayers when things are really hard and difficult and painful versus when everything's going A-okay? If when things are going A-okay,
Will not pray.
I don't pray, then perhaps, and yeah, they don't hate me for saying this, but perhaps I am treating God as that little bendy knotted stick. As we're basically, I call Him God, but I treat Him as my slave, my servant, my vending machine, the one who hooked me up. So when I get what I want,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, Solomon nowhere says that these idol worshippers are 100% of the time worshiping these false idols. These same idol worshippers are also, when it's convenient for them, worshiping the Lord. And that's the point, I think, is that when it's convenient, when they need Him. But otherwise, I will worship to the God of fertility. I will worship to the God whatever the multitude of gods that were like filling out each desire. And then God is sort of like, well, yeah, He's there and He's the one I worship. He's the ultimate. And, we do the exact same thing. We can easily think of God at the last minute when we're in a crunch, when I've crafted my image for so long and now my image is not bringing in any income, or my career, I lost it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
The thing that y'all like, Yani, it's very scary to think about, really. It's like, is it possible for me to think that, I'm a true believer and I'm a worship of God, and then one day I go stand before him and I find out that it was just like a source for me, like some source to do like the things that I want, and that's it.
Abuna, he
So
was,
it's not, it's not a very pleasant feeling to even think that this is a possibility, but the best I can do as your servant is I want to encourage you and me first to ask yourself, what is God to you? Not who is God to you. If that makes sense, if you know what I'm saying. Like, do we really look at him as our sovereign Lord and Master, or our just supplier? And to answer that question, I know like these are the questions that I likes to ask. The answer to that question is look at what I do when the two things I was saying. Take a survey of your peers. How much of them? How many pieces of paper we get on the altar every Sunday in every liturgy, and how many people we have standing doing the praises on Saturday night? And the praises, the only thing we keep asking repeatedly, forgive us our sins, that he may forgive us our sins, that he may forgive us our sins. That's the only thing. Okay, but otherwise it's praising him. And I think that's a sign. And don't hate the messenger. Don't shoot the messenger. Go ahead, Mama, and then Escadar, and then Raf.
Selman was very good. I'm not giving him an excuse, but when he became older and married many people, and these people were not Jews, so they distracted him to the worshipping of these idols.
Correct.
So, but at the end, God forgave him because of David, but he was not, in his, at the time when he was worshiping God. And
so actually, you do bring up a good point in the sense I may start out with the right understanding.
Yeah.
Which is when he first became king and God told him, what do you want? Just ask for it. He said, I want to serve you right. I want to serve your people right. Give me wisdom and discernment so that I can serve them right. Okay, I want to honor you, and I want to take good care of your people. I want to be even like a much better king even than my dad did, for you. Like it was, and that's why God was like so, I don't want to say so touched by this because he knew what he was going to pray, but like that's what gave him the wisdom and the discernment and wealth and strength and peace and everything else. So my point is that just because I am on the right path for now, don't let your guard down. I may veer off, and again, like that desensitization and tolerance. But like for politics or to keep peace, okay, I'll marry her. I don't worship. No, I'm not. Don't even mention idol. And then the next wife, okay, but you can worship it in your own place. I'm not gonna touch it. Okay, you can offer incense to it too, but I'm not going to. Okay, I'll come watch, but I'm not gonna do incense. Okay, I'll do incense, but from far away. Okay, and you know what I'm saying? It's
temptation.
It's not how we start; it's how we finish and how we persevere. Espada.
I know.
No, I'm good.
Oh, it was about the prayers. Like sometimes if people are beginners, I think it's better to pray, to ask something and pray that way than not to pray at all, maybe just for until we advance to that point, just in case somebody was
Thank
curious.
you.
So,
No, that's actually very controversial of you to say that. I am, like I told you, I'm seriously talking to me first. So like Jesus said, be perfect like your Father in heaven is perfect. So keep aiming at higher and higher and higher. Look what Escadar is saying. Did y'all heard that? I don't need to repeat it. For spiritual babes or those who are on the beginning part of their journey, whatever, to actually all of us, yeah, you do ask, he said ask, seek and knock, but just to hopefully, along with the asking and all that stuff, that I also add to my diet of prayer, adoration and praises, and simply talking to God about how I feel or my day, or like, you know, like I don't want to say like my spouse because he's the bridegroom and we're the bride, like just what you usually do at the end of the day. But Rafa, go ahead.
So, in the same line of what you said about focusing on things in life more, I hope I don't say this in a way that stirs up the controversy. But the way sometimes we treat the holy oil and holy water in our church is obsession of the things that it can do to us. I'm not against holy water and holy oil. I know that they have blessing, but I think we overdo it, like because they are not for our spiritual life, they're for healing, maybe for blessing the house. Like, if there is opportunity to have a holy water spread in my house, fine, it's a blessing. But I can make my house blessed by loving and respecting my wife and children and loving God. That's even more effective and has a long term rather than one time.
Yes,
once in a
absolutely.
while.
I mean, I also like do this without leaving the other undone too.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, God, he's gonna ask, like, did you, okay, love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, love your neighbor as yourself. Did you love me? That's the question. It's like, right, the greatest commandment. So when we stand before him, he says, did you love me? Oh, yes, I loved you so much. I would like sing to you and I would like, you know, sprinkle holy water and all that stuff. He said, okay, but did you love me? Like, what are you talking about? Did you keep my commandments? Did you do the oil and water and whatnot, but not treat your wife nicely or your husband nicely, or not take care of your kids or be there for them, or not serve other people, or not both. We need both. Okay, comments, questions, concerns, compliments, anything?
Don't pass.
Go ahead.
In the Gospel of John, in the first chapter, it says, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it, or comprehended it, or overpowered it. And I remember the first man in this chapter is the one who saw the beauty and was a scientist and could overcome it with his mind. And I wonder if, like, I think Missy sort of touched on this, is when we said he rejected because he can't control it with his mind, because you can't comprehend God. You can comprehend sciences and formulas and so forth, and you get to a certain point, you can't comprehend it, so it doesn't exist. So we're in darkness. And the second one, also, because I can control it, that's my God. And so in this part, the light shines in the darkness. So we're in the darkness, and the darkness cannot comprehend it. But the light was, so if we're in darkness, we're every bit as bad as these people that we have here. And there is no hope except for the verse before it says, but so in the light, in him was life, and the life was the light of men. So, so it reminds me that in order for us to overcome this, we can blame ourselves for or these people that are stupid, but we are condemned to this without the light of men.
Yes, we're doing, we are my first, because we're doing what they're doing, but we've read all this, like we're seeing history. So you think like,
but maybe Jesus can help us through it in a way that he couldn't help them then. Maybe.
yes, can do all things.
No, he did to them everything equally, but in a different way. God does not leave himself without the witness.
Oh, okay.
Like when you listen to stories of converts from Islam, for example, the vast majority of them have seen so many visions.
Those people.
God worked with them. Otherwise, it's not just to be born at that time. This is to be born.
Okay, let's pray. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. Oh, there's so many lessons in this chapter 13. Help us, Lord, to look at everyone with your eyes. To look at and recognize that there's a piece of you in everybody. To recognize, Lord, that we're not that much different. We are seeking for the same thing, only we had the fortune, the good fortune, the blessing of being introduced to the right source sooner before these people. And Lord, that we don't just take advantage of that and enjoy it, but also to try to point the right way to you, the true medicine, Lord. Help us, Lord, to not become arrogant and to look at people as fools, while in slightly different ways we do the same things and worse. Lord, we really want to be faithful to you. We really want to love you, to believe in you, and to treat you as you ought to be treated, the Lord. And we have seen today how we can very easily fool ourselves and very easily deceive ourselves and think that we are worshiping you, while in fact we are just taking you as just a source, somebody to do what we need. Protect us from our own deceptions of you. And we appreciate that you are that understanding and leading with us. Please hear us through the intercession, say, Mary. No, you sing some letters, so please you from the beginning and through the mighty power of your love giving cross. Please, O Lord, make us ready to pray thankfully. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread. Give us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. In Christ Jesus our Lord, for thou is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Now the love of God, the Father, grace and Holy God, Son, our Lord, God, and Savior Jesus Christ, and the communion, the gift of the Holy Spirit, be with you all. Go in peace, the peace of the Lord be with you. We'll see you next Wednesday, God willing.
Your spirit.
After
Yes, no, you
What?
won't be here next Wednesday.
I won't be here next Wednesday. Where? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, that's right. Next Wednesday is I'm at the clergy annual meeting in Florida, so there's no Bible study next Wednesday. It'll be the Wednesday after. It'll be in the Great Fast then. All right. Bye all.
Good night, everyone.